Mango here. Today, I want to talk about my favorite mouse pads from 2022 and from the looks of it, 2023. They are Lethal Gaming Gear's Saturn Pro, as well as their Venus Pro mouse pads. These are fantastic and have been touted as artisan mousepad killers. Is that the case? Well, in my experience, yes. Definitely the case. Just go ahead and check these out. Use code MANGO at checkout, save 5% off. And here are some CSGO professionals using the mousepad in game. In case you're not familiar with the scene, these are all tier 1 CS pros competing for a $1 million prize pool at Katowice 2023. If that wasn't enough to convince you to cop these mousepads, well, let's dive into my long-term review, as I've had them for several months and have enjoyed every single bit of it. There have been a lot of ups and a few downs, and I'll dive into everything in between. Also, Lethal Gaming Gear did send these out for review, but that's not going to affect how I feel about these mouse pads, and I'm going to keep it real with y'all and tell y'all how it is. So with that, check out my wallpapers on ieatmangos.com. Consider buying one of the wallpaper packs, as it directly supports me, and I would really appreciate the support. Also, subscribe to my channel if you enjoy this type of content, and like the video. Let's dive right into the unboxing experience. You'll receive your mouse pads in a nice flat cardboard box. In that box will be the envelope styled box that contains the mouse pad itself. When you open up that envelope styled box, you will then come to the Pro mouse pad, which is made of a Poron base and made of very nice polyester surfaces that I have found amazing in game. Let's talk about the specs of these mouse pads. Firstly, the Venus Pro. This comes in the original specs, which is 3.5 millimeter thickness Poron, 490 by 410 millimeter size, or the 500 by 500 millimeter square size. That's the one that's my favorite across the board, and it is just so nice. You get a lot more vertical space, which is helpful for when you want to like flick and there's usually not enough room on your mouse pad. This fixes that. So definitely go with that size. There's also two colors, and these are the same for both the Venus Pro and the Saturn Pro. It's either black or red. If you go with the red version, it is quite bright and flashy. I really like it. If you want something more subdued and something that'll work with a lot more different, keyboard aesthetics, desk setups, etc., the black version is always there. Now, the Saturn Pro is slightly different, and let's talk about it. It's currently in the pre-order phase. It'll come in either 490 by 420 millimeter, 500 by 500 millimeter, or 1000 by 500 millimeter. And no, when the Venus Pro's stock is done, they will also update it to these design specs too. Now, which size is my favorite between these three? It's going to be the 500 and 500 millimeter. Again, I really like the square size. It's very versatile. You could even rotate it diagonally, get a lot more horizontal width as well. So overall, for me, that's the winner. Now, it comes in two softnesses. This will either be extra soft or soft, and both these bases are going to be 4 millimeter thickness, which is the same thickness as the Artisan mouse pads. The extra soft will be very squishy, and the soft will be a little firmer, but again, there will be a give to the mouse pads. And I'll have a quick updated review when these mouse pads are in my hands. With that being said, you also have the same two red or black colors. Should anyone go for that 1000 by 500? Yeah, for sure. It's going to be $100. I know it sounds hefty, but it's still $10 less than getting two of the 500 by 500 millimeters and putting those together. So it's going to be worth it if that's something that you are interested in. Now, there are two things to keep in mind. The smell. It is going to have a little bit of smell when you first order it, but it does degas in like less than 24 hours. And then they will also have slight millimeter variances within the sizes, but don't worry about it. It's all within spec, and it's not going to impact your experience whatsoever. You're still going to get a very nice premium mousepad. Why should you get these over the OG variants? Well, it's because these come with higher quality materials. The Poron foam is significantly better and more luxurious than the original rubber. Do you need it? No, but that's something you need to ask yourself. These are endgame mouse pads meant for those who are serious about FPS shooters and want the best of the best. That's who these mouse pads are for. And now let's talk about my experience after having these for several months now. Let's talk about my Saturn Pro mouse pad. Between the two mouse pads, this is the one that has gotten more hours of use, as it just comes in more handy for the games that I personally enjoy playing, which are tech FPS games. As far as the X and Y axis of this mouse pad go, it's extremely consistent. I have nothing but praises to give with regards to the consistency felt. It does not feel super speedy, but it does have a nice consistent glide throughout the mouse pad, irrespective of what mouse gates I use, whether they be stock ones from Razer, Core pads, etc. It works really well. You could even use glass mouse feet, and again, you will have a consistent feel on the mouse pad. Now, when it comes to the static friction or the friction moving the mouse from rest to wherever on the mouse pad, it is very consistent. You do not feel like you're going to have to overcompensate when swiping the mouse. It just goes as you want it to go. The dynamic friction, or the friction required to stop the mouse, is very consistent too. As you can see here, when I swipe my hand aggressively across the mouse pad, my hand stops exactly where I want it to stop. It does not do any little shaking here or there. It's moving exactly where I want it to. So overall, I'm very happy with this surface. Let's now take a super close look at the stitching on this mouse pad. As you can see, the stitching is very consistent. It's nice. And since I have now used it for several months, it does pick up a little bit of like balls of the cloth from my arm sleeve. But outside of that, the stitching has held up well. It hasn't frayed, although there are a few little fuzzies on the sides. Overall, very happy. This also does have a pour-on base, but I haven't really used the pour-on base as I have a massive SteelSeries QCK desk pad that I use to cover the crack in my desk. It's a standing desk, so they come split half and half. But because of that, it has caused me to not take advantage of that pour on, which would cause it not to slide. And in fact, even though this is on another mouse pad, it does not slide that much. As you can see, I'm trying to move it. It does slide a little bit side to side, but I really have to try. In game, I have found that it is inconsequential. So that's just my personal experience using this mouse pad, as I am a little bit of an edge case using it on top of another massive mouse pad. Now the surface, let's look at it up close. When you look at the details of this mouse pad up close and personal in a macro lens, you can see that the weave is very nice. I can say that when you compare it to the weave on the Artisan, in your fingers, you will feel that this texture is softer than the Artisan Zero. But we'll dive into a more detailed comparison between the Saturn Pro and other mouse pads in a few moments. Overall experiences with the Saturn Pro have been phenomenal. And after using it for several months, I've had nothing but praises. Now, this was a review unit. And so because of that, I do want to mention that my mouse pad did come with the edges a little curled. So you can see the left side is raised a little bit and the corners on my mouse pad are raising just a tad, which was a little inconvenient, but I personally thought I was being really picky about my mouse pad, so I never really even complained to Lethal Gaming Gear. I recently contacted them. They were like, yeah, that was a part of a very small percent that were affected. And the reason for this, as it affected both of my mouse pads, was because the way they were shipping the pour-on, the foam pads from Japan to Taiwan was by rolling the foam and then shipping it over. When they rolled it and shipped it, what happened is that the memory in the foam kept that roll. So because of that, some of these pads came a little curled, and it is a defect. And if you are an individual who already owns this mouse pad and came across that issue, you can definitely go ahead and contact them and they'll hook you up with fresh mouse pads. What they're going to do from now on with the future batches is they're going to have the pour-on bases be pre-cut from Japan, then sent over to Taiwan to be then stitched up into these lovely mouse pads. So that's a little tidbit directly from Lethal Gaming Gear, as I wanted to know what will happen with the future batches. I've really enjoyed using these in all the games that I play, especially Valorant and CSGO. I just have a blast with this mouse pad. It is just such a nice experience. The squishiness of the pour-on base makes it even more comfortable on my arms when I'm using it, and I just really have nothing but praise to say. Moving on to the Venus Pro, this mousepad is clearly intended for people who like speed pads. They have done a fantastic job of blending the ability to move your mouse fast with stopping the mouse as quickly and responsively as you like in game. The X and Y axes are extremely consistent, meaning I do not feel any inconsistency when swiping my mouse on the pad. And the static friction, or the ability to move the mouse from rest, is very nice and fast. The dynamic friction is still pretty high on this mousepad, meaning you can stop with ease, which I really like. As far as the stitching quality on the Venus goes, it is fantastic. Again, it is as good as the Saturn Pros. In fact, my Venus's stitching is slightly cleaner, and I haven't had as much fuzzies appear, though that might just be because I haven't used it as frequently as the Saturn Pro. The pour-on base on this is fantastic as well. Again, I'm using this on top of my SteelSeries QCK XXX XL mousepad, and even though it might slip a little if I make it, in game, it seldom slipped. And I will show you in the comparisons when you put it on a proper wooden or surface that's not cloth, it sticks like a charm. I'll also talk about how to clean these mouse pads up ahead, so stick around for that. Which games do I recommend the Venus Pro for? Primarily games that are tracking heavy. So Apex Legends, Halo Infinite, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, Overwatch, Fortnite. These are all games that will take advantage of the ability of swiping your mouse fast, as when you play those games, you need to be able to flick with ease. unlike TAC FPS games. Though that isn't to say I haven't used this on TAC FPS games. I found that when I wasn't hitting my shots with the Saturn Pro in CSGO or Valorant, I would just switch over to this and I would have a great time. When comparing the two surfaces, you can clearly see that the Venus Pro's surface is slightly darker shade of red than the Saturn Pro. Though nevertheless, I really like both of these red colors they have used. They are nice, vibrant, and they pop, which is really nice. If that's something that you might consider distracting when gaming, then opt for the black surfaces, but I actually really like the color they've went for. It's just very nice in my opinion. I really like it. When it comes to comparing these head-on, these surfaces, you can clearly tell that the Saturn Pro is a slower surface, but slow is a relative term. It is still that nice level of consistency. You're just able to move the mouse with a little more intention than on the Venus. With the Venus, you're able to track far faster as it's just a slipperier experience. Let's now compare the Saturn Pro surface to some of the competitor surfaces. In front of me are the Lethal Gaming Gear Saturn Pro and the Artisan Zero. Let's firstly look at the squish, as they're both Poron based mouse pads. When it comes to the squishiness, I feel like the Artisan Zero has a slight bit more amount of squishiness than the Lethal Gaming Gear Saturn Pro. Now, let's talk about the surfaces. When it comes to the surfaces, you can definitely feel that the Artisan Zero is slightly faster and louder than the Saturn Pro. The Saturn Pro is nicer glide and quieter versus the Artisan, which is a little louder when you are using it. The texture of the Artisan Zero in my fingertips is slightly more coarse than the Saturn Pro, which feels very soft in hand. Now, as far as the stitching of both of these go, it is excellent, though the Artisan currently is a little bit ahead in comparison to the Saturn Pro because it's a slightly thinner stitching. Now, as far as the speed of the Artisan Zero goes, it is, again, a little faster than the Saturn Pro. If I had to choose between the two, I feel like the Saturn Pro is the better between the two mouse pads. Not only does it feel better, it's also far larger than the Artisan Zero. Now, when it comes to the sizes, you can also tell that the Artisan Zero is smaller than the Saturn Pro, and I feel like that extra height you get on the Saturn Pro makes it that more compelling to use. Now, when it comes to the Poron bases, both of them are very nice and they get a proper seal on wood, veneer, etc. So if I had to pick between the two, I would definitely choose the Saturn Pro every day of the week in comparison to the Artisan Zero. When comparing the Saturn Pro to the Zowie GSR non-SE version, this is the OG variant, which could also be compared to the SteelSeries QCK. These mouse pads definitely do feel a little coarser in the fingertips in comparison to the Saturn Pro, which again feels a little softer and it's a little more quiet. Now, when swiping the mouse on the two mouse pads, I can definitely tell the GSR does have a little bit more dynamic friction than the Saturn Pro. You can also see that the mouse does stop a little bit sooner than on the Saturn Pro. However, when I swipe between the two mouse pads, I do feel that though the Saturn Pro is a little faster, it's the one I prefer. Now, the Poron base in comparison to the rubberized base of the GSR's base is a little tougher than the Saturn Pro's. The stitching on both of these are very nice and high quality. The biggest downside of the GSR in comparison to the Saturn Pro is the size. Just look how it fits inside the Saturn Pro. Overall, the size of the Saturn Pro, the materials used, and everything make it a premium control pad for people who are serious about esports titles and fragging out. This truly is an endgame mouse pad for most users. So here's how I keep my Lethal Gaming Gear Pro pads clean. Firstly, I douse a microfiber cloth in water. Get it as wet as possible, and then wring out as much water as you can. You do not want this to be wet. You do not want this to be drenched in water. You want this to simply be lightly damp with water. Once you have the microfiber cloth lightly damped, let's now get to the desk. At the desk, we will now just lightly rub the surface of the mouse pad in simple strokes, left to right, right to left, and then up and down, down and up. You get the idea. You want to just lightly cover the whole surface with the microfiber cloth and get the surface clean that way. Next, you flip the mouse pad over, and on the Poron pad, you want to lightly now go over the surface with the microfiber cloth and clean as much of the dirt as you can visually see. Do not be aggressive in this process. Just go over it lightly and clean up as much as you can. Now, the other method is to use Boardsy's method with Lysol, and I do recommend that as well. But if you do not want to go through the effort of buying Lysol, then I do recommend you go ahead and just use this method to lightly clean up your mousepad. Now, optionally, you can go ahead and shake the water out of your mousepad, but that's something I'm doing out of a force of habit. You do not need to do that at all. One thing I do want to quickly mention as advice is if your Poron pad isn't sticking to your desk easily, go ahead and take this damp cloth and also wipe down the surface of your table as well. well so that there's better adhesion of the pad and your desk. With that, check out the glide on the mouse pad. It's like good as new. We've come full circle. Let's review my answer at the beginning of the video. Are the Lethal Gaming Gear Saturn Pro and Venus Pro worth your hard-earned money? In my opinion, absolutely. If you're in the market for an upgrade, these mouse pads are the best value and quality that you can get currently on the market. They are truly artisan mouse pad killers. If you are a pro who wants a direct upgrade from the Zowie GSR Original or the SteelSeries QCK, the Lethal Gaming Gear Saturn Pro is a serious upgrade in all aspects. When it comes to the surface, the stitching, the pour-on pad used, it really is a one-to-one upgrade. If you've tried the Vaxi XE, the Zowie GSR SE, and the Zowie GSR SE Rouge, you felt like those mouse pads and similar mouse pads in that category were too fast for you, the Saturn Pro is going to be the perfect pad when it comes to control and a little bit of speed. The Venus Pro is also a fantastic mousepad, hands down. And if you're a pro, I would definitely suggest you pick one of those up too, so that when you're having an off day, you can go ahead and use the Venus Pro, and hey, it could possibly help you out. With that being said, use code MANGO at checkout, save yourself 5% off on your order, and you also directly support me, which I would greatly appreciate. And consider buying one of the wallpaper packs on IEatMangos.com.